Java Microservices interview questions and answers. Beginner means advanced. Introduction. Java microservices are small, independent, deployable services built using Java technologies to create scalable and distributed applications. Java microservices are widely used for cloud-native applications, enterprise systems, distributed systems, scalable backend platforms, fintech and e-commerce systems. Common technologies used in Java microservices: Java, Spring Boot, Apache Kafka, Docker, Kubernetes, REST APIs. 1 to 20. Java microservices basics. What is a microservice? Small, independently deployable service focused on a specific business capability. What is Java microservices architecture? Distributed architecture using Java-based independent services. Why use microservices? Scalability. Check. Independent deployment. Check. Fault isolation. Technology flexibility. Monolith versus microservices. Monolith is single application. Microservices are distributed independent services. What is Spring Boot? Java framework simplifying microservice development. Why is Spring Boot popular for microservices? Auto configuration, embedded server, rapid development, basic Spring Boot application, Spring Boot application, public class app, public static void main string args, Spring application run app.class, args, HTTP-based service communication. Common HTTP methods: get, post, put, delete. What is stateless service? Service not storing client session locally. Why are stateless services important? Scalability, check. Load balancing, check. Resilience. What is API gateway? Central entry point for microservices. Why use API gateway? Check. Routing, authentication, rate limiting, monitoring. What is service discovery? Dynamically locating services. Common service discovery tools: Eureka, Consul, Kubernetes DNS. What is Eureka Server? Netflix Service Registry. What is client-side load balancing? Client selects available service instance. What is distributed system? Multiple connected services working together. What is scalability? Ability to handle increased traffic workload. Horizontal versus vertical scaling. Horizontal adds servers. Vertical increases resources. 21 to 40. Spring Boot and REST APIs. What is @REST controller? @REST controller public class user controller. Maps HTTP requests to methods. Get endpoint example, @get mapping users. Post endpoint example, @post mapping users. What is @path variable? @get mapping users /ID. Retrieves query parameters. What is @request body? Maps request payload to object. What is DTO? Data transfer object. Why use DTOs? A. Void exposing entities. Key validation. Cleaner APIs. What is validation in Spring Boot? @not null private string name. What is exception handling? Handling runtime errors gracefully. Global exception handler example. @controller advice. What is response entity? Custom HTTP response wrapper. Response entity example. Return response entity.ok data. What is dependency injection? Providing dependencies externally. What is @AutoWord? @AutoWord private user service. What is Spring Bean? Object managed by Spring Container. What is inversion of control? IOC. Framework manages object lifecycle. What is layered architecture? Controller, service, repository. What is repository layer? Handles database operations. 41 to 70. Databases, messaging, and security. What is Spring Data JPA? Simplifies database access. JPA repository example. Public interface user repo extends JPA repository user long. ORM framework for Java. What is ORM? Object relational mapping. What is entity class? @entity public class user. What is @ID annotation? Defines primary key. Managing schema changes. Common migration tools? Flyway, Liquibase. What is connection pooling? Reusing database connections. What is Hikari CP? High performance JDBC connection pool. What is asynchronous communication? Non-blocking service communication. What is Kafka? Distributed event streaming platform. Why use Kafka in microservices? Event-driven architecture. Decoupling services. Scalability. Kafka producer example. Kafka template. Send, topic, message. What is Kafka consumer? Reads messages from Kafka topic. What is RabbitMQ? Message broker for asynchronous messaging. What is event-driven architecture? Services communicate through events. What is JWT? JSON Web Token for authentication. What is OAuth 2? Authorization framework. What is Spring Security? Security framework for Spring applications. What is authentication? Verifying user identity. What is authorization? Granting access permissions. Cross-origin resource sharing. What is rate limiting? Restricting API request frequency. What is API versioning? Managing API changes over time. Common API versioning methods. URI versioning. Header versioning. What is idempotency? Repeated requests produce same result. What is distributed transaction? Transaction across multiple services. What is saga pattern? Managing distributed transactions. What is circuit breaker pattern? Prevents cascading failures. 71 to 100. Cloud native and advanced microservices. What is resilience in microservices? What is resilience 4J? Fault tolerance library. What is retry mechanism? Retrying failed requests automatically. What is timeout handling? Limiting request wait duration. What is observability? Monitoring system behavior. What is distributed tracing? Tracking requests across services. Common tracing tools. Zipkin, Jaeger. What is centralized logging? Aggregating logs into one platform. Common logging tools. ELK Stack, Splunk. What is Docker? Containerization platform. Dockerfile example. From Eclipse Temurin 21. Copy app.jar, app.jar. What is Kubernetes? Container orchestration platform. Why use Kubernetes? Scaling, self-healing, orchestration. What is pod in Kubernetes? Smallest deployable unit. What is CI/CD? Continuous integration and continuous deployment. Check, Jenkins, GitHub Actions, GitLab CI. What is blue-green deployment? Deployment using two environments. What is canary deployment? Releasing changes gradually. Externalizing application configs. Common configuration tools? Spring Cloud Config, Console. What is 12-factor app? Best practices for cloud-native apps. Actuator, Actuator Health. What is Actuator in Spring Boot? Monitoring and management endpoints. What is OpenFein? Declarative REST client. Fein client example. At Fein client name user service. Common Java microservices interview topics. Spring Boot, REST APIs, Kafka, Docker, Kubernetes. Common microservices challenges. Click, distributed debugging. Click, latency. Click, consistency. Click, monitoring. How to become strong in Java microservices. Build Spring Boot projects. Learn Docker Kubernetes. Practice event-driven architecture. Biggest Java microservices interview concept. Distributed, scalable, backend architecture. Key Java microservices interview focus. Spring Boot, APIs, resilience, messaging, and cloud-native deployment. Final summary. Java microservices interviews focus on check, Spring Boot, REST APIs, Docker and Kubernetes, Kafka and messaging, distributed systems, security and JWT, observability and monitoring, resilience patterns. Key idea. Strong Java microservices developers understand scalable distributed systems, cloud-native architecture, resilience, and automation.